Hello and welcome back to Blackwatch Intel. My name is Crashy, and today we're going to be discussing tanks in Overwatch. Now, I kind of touched on how I wanted to make this a video, and I talked a little bit about my perspective and my thoughts on tanks, and I'm going to try to condense that down because I do have quite a bit of thoughts going on, and I don't really want this to be a 10-minute video. I'd like to keep it around 5-ish, 6-ish minutes, so we'll see how I do on that. But ultimately, I want to talk about where tanks lie, and I want to ask a very pivotal question. Really kind of two questions if you think about it. The first question I want to ask, and you might already see it in the title, we'll kind of see, I kind of like to spitball like I've said in the past. Are tanks OP? Are the current state of tanks just too strong, and do they force the meta in a really strong way, is ultimately the way that I'm thinking about the game. And my initial thought, and I just want to share my opinion, and we're gonna explore this, so maybe my opinion will change, or maybe I'll be able to dive deep into my thoughts like I did the other night on one of the live streams. My initial thought is that I think tanks are a little too strong in the game, and that has a perspective on it. Like, when I say too strong, what exactly do I mean? I think my perspective on the game and on balance and on the way that it's played currently is that tanks do too much damage in the game. And I want to look at tanks across the board. I want to look at everybody in the tank category, and I want to explain that from my perspective, from my seat, everybody in the tank category does a little bit too much damage. Now, the fun of Overwatch, and this is the second question, is if we nerf overall tank damage, is the game less fun for that role? And that's a really hard question to answer because, one, I'm not much of a tank player. I play everything in the game. I've played on various accounts, so I've played all kinds of heroes. I've played all kinds of comps. I've played, all 4 or 5 seasons of Overwatch now, as we're heading into the 6th season pretty soon. And I have played it all. I've played everything. I even dabbled in competitive play early on when people were forming teams and such. And I think that I'm worried that if the tanks lose some damage, they would lose some of their fun. But I'm not sure that has to be the case, because what makes a tank fun for me, and I mean this very honestly, and it's not just to push my idea, I think what makes a tank very fun to me is being that brick wall. And it doesn't have to be Reinhardt, it doesn't have to be Orisa type of brick wall. I just mean you're that person that's so hard to deal with. But at the same time, I don't think that in that way you should be able to completely eliminate a hero so fast. And the best example I can give right now is Winston. And I want to talk about Winston because we have this issue of the meta. I guess it's an issue. I don't know. Dive comp is just super strong. Lots of people complain about it. Lots of streamers have left the game and even have mentioned dive comp in the reason they left. They're just sick of this meta. And when I think about dive comp, what makes it so successful? One, the biggest reason it's so successful is because it's just so fast. It's so efficient with being able to slam damage on a target or two and wipe them immediately. And sure, the damage comes from Genji or Doomfist or Tracer or even Sombra in some, like Korean dive comps that I've seen. But is that actually the issue? The DPS, are they actually the issue? Or is it the fact that everybody does a little bit too much damage? Now, on a support kind of perspective, I do want to go ahead and say that I think the supports are very balanced across the board. Now, and I'm talking about in terms of their DPS output. I think Mercy does a decent amount of damage when she needs to. She actually does a lot of damage when she needs to. I think Ana's in a pretty okay spot. She may be a little OP for other reasons, and I don't want to talk about that just now. And like I said, I don't want to talk about their ultimates. I'm just saying from their damage perspective, I feel like all the supports are in a pretty good spot. I do. I just think they're in a good spot. But I think tanks, I think what Blizzard was trying to do, and maybe it's what they're still trying to do, is define the game, and maybe they haven't done that in a proper way yet. But I think tanks just do too much damage. You enable everybody in the Overwatch roster to get kills, and that's awesome and it's fun. But I'd like to see the tank role shift a little bit. I don't want it to be about being tanky enough to stay alive and picking up kills. I want it to be about being tanky. I mean, truly being a frontline tank and jumping in. And even if you're a secondary tank, I want the emphasis more to be on being harder to kill while being able to subsidize damage for your DPS heroes. One, I think it would do two things. I think it would balance the game a little better, and we're going to kind of, like I said, we're going to dive into this a little bit more. But two, I think it would give team fights a little bit more time to resolve, and it may make the viewing experience a little better to be able to follow it, and it may make being a prestigious, strong DPS player a little bit more fun just in the mind of the DPS player or in the mind of the team to be able to see how much that DPS player is doing without just having the tank follow up and you know, burst out damage and then a person dies so quickly you don't even know what happened. And that's kind of what dive comp has been doing a little bit. And I may be misspeaking a little bit. You know, obviously you can see when a really strong DPS player is there, but wouldn't it be much more fun to know that the tank is really there to be disruptive and to create space? And they do, but not just also to spam out a bunch of damage. So I think the major question that I'm trying to ask, and I just want to reiterate, is if tanks did less damage and were more tanky, would they be less fun? And so I kind of want you to think about that, whether you're formulating a comment or, you know, thinking of a response. And I'm just not so sure, because I think what makes a tank fun, or what makes a tank feel like they do a lot of damage in that scenario, if we were to nerf their damage, is the ability to stay alive longer. Now, if we just nerfed every tank's ability to do damage, it might put the meta in a weird spot, or it might make the game a little weird, or it might make tanks not fun. But if we increased how much armor they had, or a little bit of health, and I'm not saying across the board, this is obviously very anecdotal and just thoughts kind of coming out in audio format, but I'd like to say that I think the tanks do a little bit too much damage. Now, with that said, I want to go on ahead and say that I think Reinhardt is probably about the only tank that seems like he's in a good spot to me. I think every other tank has got some issues, at least from, like I said, from my perspective. And since he's a melee hero, and since he charges in and has this strong burst damage with, you know, actually landing a one-shot with charge, I think that's fine. But I do think that he feels a little too quick, you know, like he feels a little too squishy. He feels like you can kill him very, very quickly. And that kind of feels problematic, especially in the dive comp when they just jump all over you and you're dead in an instant. But Orisa on the PTR right now, she's getting more DPS output. Her shield's getting bigger. She's just kind of insane. Roadhog, his damage output is actually not that bad. Now his one-shot potential has gone away, or, you know, is more or less gone like the old one-shot hog was, but his damage output's actually really good. He can two-shot a lot of heroes, you know what I mean? Like, he's not bad, and he's very controlling, and now they're making him harder to kill, which is good. I think it's fine. And I do think there's room for tanks to be, you know, kind of like hybrid roles, like the DPS hog, where he wasn't as hard to kill, but he did a lot of burst damage or had that one shot, and that's fine. We'll talk about that, you know, at a later time, because I do think there are role hybrids that come into play. But, you know, Winston does a ton of damage, pretty hard to kill, not that hard to kill. D.Va, super hard to kill, and does a ton of damage. It's just weird. I just think that the tank roster is in a place that I'm not necessarily sure they should be. And this whole discussion is just based on thoughts and opinions, and it's just something I wanted to get out there. It's something I wanted to talk about and to see what others are thinking, because I don't know if this is just me. I don't know if I'm right here, if I'm totally wrong. I don't know if tanks would be less fun. To me, I don't think they would. I don't think it's fair that when I jump on a Mercy as Winston, she's just dead. I mean, sure, she can fly away, but it's not like I can't follow up on that, and it's not like the Lucio is gonna get away from me when I'm Winston. It's not like, you know, they're gonna get away from me when I'm D.Va. And it maybe is just, you know, the dive tanks that need some looking at, but I really just wish that the tank role was more defined. I think that they do everything so well. They're so supporty in nature. They mitigate so much damage. They do so much damage. And I think the definition of something being overpowered is when they fill too many roles. You know, when a single character does too much and is providing so much value to a team, that's what makes them overpowered. And I think that in a lot of ways, not necessarily as much for others, I think a lot of the heroes in the tank pool are kind of filling that niche for me. So that's my thought. I let this discussion go as long as I said I wouldn't, but I would love to know what you think. Are the tanks OP? Do they do too much damage? Would they be fun if they didn't do as much damage and were a little bit tankier? So thanks for watching this video. Please do not leave without leaving a like and subscribe for future content. I'm going to keep coming up with these ideas. I'm going to just talk about the game that I love. I want to play it so much. I'm trying to push out as much as I can, and I'm absolutely loving growing the channel. I'm going to probably say that every day till, I don't know, till forever. So thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.
Do you feel your bones start to shake? Do you feel the earthquake? Do you feel the fire inside of me? Do you see the sparks that I'm setting free? Does the beat take you over?